Hello everybody, welcome to our first Telescope Talk Hangout for 2018. My name is Tony Darnell. I work at deepastronomy.space. And today we're going to finally go into what a lot of people have been asking for. We're going to make our foray into the topic of imaging. We're going to talk about what you need, what are some of the basics you need to get started in the field of imaging, and how hard is it to do, and all of that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of thing we like to tackle here on this particular hangout, because this is where we dive into the hobby of amateur astronomy. And we hope that if you're thinking about becoming an amateur astronomer, you just want to see what the hobby is like, well, that's sort of one of our jobs here, is to kind of, we've all been involved in amateur astronomy for decades among all of us here, and we've got a lot of good information to share. So I hope you get a lot out of this hangout series. We go every other Wednesday. Adam just reminded me that I think we started this last year at 4 p.m. and here I am starting it at 3. I might have screwed this up, so we might be at 4 p.m. next week. I don't know. But we want to welcome you to this Hangout series. We hope that you get a lot out of it. Let me pull up my two co-hosts here. On the top is Adam Smith. He is a amateur astronomer, and he also is he also has a podcast called Unseen Podcast, which if you haven't listened to, you need to check it out. Hi, Adam. It's good to see you.
Hey, Tony. Hey, everyone.
First time for the year. On right below him is Alexander Reinders. He is and by the way, Adam's in the UK. He's a UK amateur astronomer. And below him is Alexander Reinders. He's in Germany and also an amateur astronomer and imager extraordinaire. And you can see some of the stuff behind him now. Hi, Alex.
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you.
So we haven't really talked since last year, have we, guys?
Yes.
No, before Christmas.
Yeah. So, did you guys have a good holiday? I mean, I'm just first time I'm checking up with you guys. Was everything good in the UK and Europe?
It's good.
Snow.
I know you guys have been getting
Florida?
a lot of. Yeah. Hey, it's been really cold here. Like two weeks ago. No, last week it got down below freezing. That was bad. I'm looking out now at all my dead tropical plants because it got below 40. And whenever that happens, boom, 40 is about 5, I think, Celsius. So, yeah, it's crazy. So, but yeah, had a good holiday. Everything's going well. And I have to tell you guys, 2018 is a make or break year for deep astronomy. I've been doing this for 2 years now. This is the third year. I have got to make this work, this business venture. So if you want to support, what these content, not just the Hangouts, but everything else that we're doing, please visit deepastronomy.space. There's lots of ways you can contribute and donate, or become a Patreon patron. You could also just visit the website. The traffic numbers, the more people watching the videos, all of this stuff helps me be able to find ways to support the work we're doing in deep astronomy. So if you like what we're doing, please go to deepastronomy.space and check out some ways to do that. I should also mention, we've been doing this throughout 2016 or 2017, but in 2018 I'm trying to make my life a little bit easier, and we have lots of live chats. We simultaneously stream on 4 different platforms every hangout, and I often miss a lot of the chats. I watch the YouTube live chat because that's where most people seem to be participating. But if you go to deepastronomy.space/live and use the built-in Discord chat there, I would prefer that, just because I've got it. I've got the app sitting right here on my phone. I can look at the chat as it goes through, and Peter Q just right there. Hi guys. So I this will give me a one-stop shop for all the chats. I'm still going to try and look at all the others, but the ones I miss the most are usually Periscope, because I have no easy way to see the Periscope feed from my setup here. So if you're on Periscope watching this and you want to chat with us, please go to deepastronomy.space and check out the Discord, or download Discord on your phone and just use it there, and you can watch whatever platform you want. So so that's another way to do it too. So good. Okay, so that's the preliminaries. Imaging. Oh wait, you know what I want to talk about real quick before we do that? You guys know that next week, a week from today, we're having this super moon, blue moon lunar eclipse. You guys heard about that, right?
Yes.
Super blue blood moon.
Yeah, that's it. Are you getting sick, by the way, of hearing about supermoons? Supermoons didn't exist when I was. I mean, they did, but we didn't call them that. Anyway, all you hear about now in this day of social media is supermoon. Yeah, you're right. It's a blood moon. Why is it called a blood moon, Adam?
Because it will be a total lunar eclipse in Eastern Asia, Australia. I don't think we'll see it. We'll just get the supermoon.
Yeah, we probably... Right. So a lunar eclipse is where the Earth moves in between the moon and the sun and casts its shadow on the moon. And usually it ends up looking very reddish. And depending on how much the Earth gets in the way, it could block it out.
We had one here in the UK 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Very, very strange to see the moon turn red,
and it happens over the same time scale as a solar eclipse, obviously, because a lot of the the mechanics are the same. The arrangement's just different. So, Galaxia is going, I like YouTube better. One central place. It's one central place for you, Galaxia. But it's not for me when you're on 4 different platforms. So I get it if you want to stay there, fine. I'm still going to look at it, but I'm just saying to make my life easier, I like Discord. Another thing about YouTube, Galaxia, that I don't like is that once the stream's over, all that disappears. All that live stuff. All that live chat. So, anyway, yeah. What do you got up there?
That's a blood moon.
That's a blood moon. They don't look like that. And when I look up, what's the? Is this? Tell us what you did here, because there's more than just a lunar eclipse going on here. There's several exposures.
You also see the Earth shadow, I think, and I took several pictures, and yes, I added them, and as a result, you can see the Earth shadow and the blood moon.
Yeah. That's beautiful, by the way. I guess we should talk about how you took that, since this is a hangout on imaging. We'll go back to that image, but let's talk about equipment for just a minute. Actually, before we leave this topic. So anyway, next week you'll get all of this stuff. Now, first of all, a supermoon. All that really is a full moon at its closest point to the Earth. The moon goes around in its orbit, obviously, and it's closer and it's farther away at different parts. This happens to be at a point where the moon is the closest, and it's a full moon. They call it a supermoon. It looks a little bit bigger in the sky. I don't know how much bigger. I can never tell the difference. But anyway, that's a supermoon. And then a blue moon usually only happens in really long months, like January, March, all the months with 31 in them, because the moon has a 28-day cycle. It's when you get 2 full moons in the same month. And generally they happen in longer months. I suppose theoretically one could happen in February, but boy, you'd have to have a full moon on the 1st and then a full moon on the 28th, right, Adam? Is that about right?
Yeah, there's no full moon in February this year.
Yeah, right, because this blue moon stole it. So the next full moon will be. Oh, wait a minute,
March.
What is next week? That's the 31st, right? So
31st, yeah.
There should be a full moon in February, 28 days later.
Yeah.
So there should be.
Is it a leap year?
No, I don't think so. What is 2018? I don't think it is. No.
I think it just misses.
Well, there's no full moon on February. It's next full moon is March the 2nd.
March 2nd, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
we'll get new moon at February 15th.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's what's going to happen next week or next Wednesday, and I point that out because this is one of these. It's amateur astronomy. We care about stuff that's going up in the night sky, and that's cool. So you should definitely go out wherever you are and look at you don't have to spend a lot of time outside, especially if it's cold, and just enjoy the spectacle. Because while I've never really noticed a big difference in supermoons from supermoon to supermoon, it's pretty cool. I still worth going out and watch, especially if you can see the lunar eclipse. So that's beautiful, no matter what kind of moon you got. So anyway, check it out. I just wanted to mention it at the top of this hangout. Okay, so imaging. Boy, that's a topic that is about as big as telescopes itself. When I was selling telescopes back in the 80s, the things that you could buy were Celestron C8 telescopes. You could buy a Meade telescope. You could buy a Questar. You could buy... What other things were there? Edmund had the Astroscan. And let's see, there was a couple of other brands. Oh, Criterion was a brand you could buy back then. And they were all... none of them were computerized. They all had these electric analog clock drives on them. Those were just drives that worked like a clock, because that's what it was trying to do, was counteract the Earth's rotation. And they sold for about the same amount of money you'd buy now. I mean, a good telescope back then cost you about $2,500. Well, that's about what they cost you now, although you get a lot more for your money. And of course, the first question out of everybody's mouth, never bought a telescope before, they'd plunk down a couple $1,000s on a C8 and then say, can I take pictures with it? And that reminds me of the time when I sold computers, and people would want to buy a computer, and then you'd ask them what they want one for, and they'd say, well, word processing and spreadsheets, and oh yeah, it'd be great if we could play some games. Well, the minute they said that, they just added $1,000 to the cost of their computer. Same here. Not $1,000, a whole lot more. It gets expensive really quickly to do imaging. It is not a beginner activity. It is something that you want to do after you've gotten really familiar with the telescope you did buy. But there are some minimum things that you need for getting started with imaging and amateur astronomy. Now, both of the guys here are in the UK. They probably got different sources than I have for their equipment. But what we need, we can all talk about in common, and then maybe we can talk about where you can get it a little bit later. So, who wants to start, guys? I've been doing a lot of talking. You guys want to say some where you think the absolute basic stuff that you gotta have to just get started in imaging.
Alex,
why don't you start? You have a bunch of really cool.
So
You've been
I
doing.
would recommend using your DSLR, any DSLR you've got at home, and use a tripod. And connect it with a remote control like this.
What is that?
That's a wide remote control for a camera. You can plug it in. Let me show it here. Well, it's a Canon DSLR, and on the side you can plug the remote. Connect it. And maybe you should put it on a tripod for not wobbling, and make some exposures like 10 or 30 seconds and look at the result.
Now, what kind of lens would you recommend for your DSLR to get? Like, you see these beautiful time lapses. Those aren't actually all that hard to make, are they? From a tripod.
Hard to make, and have a very expensive lenses like this. This is a fisheye, a 10mm fisheye. I also did my Mercedes picture with it. But please use your lens you've got at home for your camera and start with that lens with an easy equipment, not too expensive, and just get some
So if you've got a DSLR, any DSLR,
DSLR you got,
put it on a tripod, point it up, and you recommend getting one of these remotes. Now, why do you think you need one of those remotes?
Well, you could also use some function on the DSLR with that time-lapse control function stuff. But it's easy for single shot, for not wobbling, not touching the camera, for taking an exposure. And so with a remote, you're better done with it.
Right. I mean, think about it. What you don't need ever in imaging is any kind of vibration. You want to get rid of that as much as you can. So if you've got a big beefy video tripod that's designed to hold a big video camera, use that to hold your DSLR. If it's overkill, that's great, because you really want stability more than anything else. But imagine you've got your DSLR sitting on a tripod pointed up at the sky, and now you've got it focused for infinity, and you've got your exposure time set. We'll talk about exposure times in a minute. And then you've got your ISO rating set. All of that's done on the DSLR. Then what are you going to do? Well, you're going to want to take the picture. What does that involve? pushing the button. And when you push the button, you're going to be moving and jiggling everything else around all over the place. So that thing, hold it up again, Alex. That little remote, the remote control thing you had.
Okay.
That plugs in. Look at it. See, it sticks out, and you push that button, and it doesn't shake the camera body. And that they used to have what they call cable releases. They used to be called cable releases, and they plugged in, and you would do this little weird plunger kind of thing, and it would push the button for you on these old film cameras, and you wouldn't be vibrating the camera as much. Let me ask you about the DSLRs that are. Okay, good. So Alex has shared his screen. Where's my cursor? There it is. Let me get it big. Okay, so Alex. This is, why don't you describe what you've got here?
This is how I did this picture. I just used the tripod here. The camera DSLR was on it with the fisheye lens, and this is a little guiding, a little tracker here. And so I did this exposure with 120 seconds, and I got this result after processing. But that will be a topic for, I think, the next session, for the next hangout. Just start easy with a tripod and use your camera and use what you've got and the feeling for what imaging means.
What ISO rating did you have for that? What did you set the camera at, and the f-stop and all of that? Go back to your Mercedes picture.
Okay.
So can you tell us what your camera settings were here for this? Do you remember?
Setting was with an internal dark, but I think we will explain it on the next hangout. It was a 120-second exposure with a fisheye lens of about 2.8 f.
The f-stop was 2.8?
Yeah.
Okay.
And with a little tracking.
Right, did you have to set the ISO to something fast, like 1600 or 800 or 400?
1600 was exactly. This was 1600. Yes.
Okay, so the fastest that your camera can capture. By the way, that is a measure. The ISO rating used to be a measure of how fast the film was, the film that you used. And 800 and an ISO of 400 or 800 was a very fast film, meaning you could do short exposures and still get a lot of signal on the film. 100 ISO was very slow. You had to have longer exposures, but the film grain, the resolution was a lot higher. But that's back in the old days. That's when, but this is a holdover from that. And now, oh, hang on, let me get my shot back. And now, the that just is a they keep those same numbers, but it's a measure of how sensitive the CCD is. So a very high ISO rating of 18 or 1600, whatever it is, means that it's very fast. It's gathering light quickly, getting the signal quickly, at the expense of and it's also got very high noise at the same time. So it's a balance of how you just have. This is the kind of thing you need to play with. Well, maybe we'll talk about some of that stuff in future ones, and we're definitely going to talk about image processing in the next hangout. But today we just want to get you familiar with it on this stuff. Upcycle Electronics says, I don't like the wired remotes. I prefer wireless, or better yet, a direct link to the PC. I did low light product photography, and the wired remote still shook my setup. So that's good. I mean, they do make remote ones, or wired or wireless ones as well. And I guess you can also. I've never used these on
Alex
DSLRs.
is holding one up. But
this is a wireless one.
Oh, it is wireless. Oh, you have a wireless one. Oh, okay.
Yes.
So there you go. Okay.
This is a wireless one. You connect this to your camera and you steer it and program it with this little thing. This is a remote, and so you are not connected mechanically to your camera, so you're fine to do some exposures.
Peter Q goes, by the way, I am now a science communicator. It takes a while. Take it, everyone's in YouTube. No, I'm here, Peter. I'm looking at the Discord chat, so stay here. I got you. And by the way, that's a cool GIF. Okay, but let's go. So DSLRs are a great way to get started in imaging, especially if you already own one. You can just use it for wide-angle views of the entire sky. Now, Alex had this little... He still had a clock drive. He still had a way to counteract the Earth's rotation, and that's vital in long exposure imaging. He said that was 120 seconds, right? So in 120 seconds, while that camera is open, the Earth is still turning, and if he did not have that, he would have gotten star trails. Now,
Exactly.
Huh?
Exactly. Star trails after, I think, 20 seconds exposure. So,
They start to elongate. The Earth's rotation starts to become visible. Galaxia tried to log in, and it didn't work for me. Crap. Okay. Thank you, Galaxia, for trying. I'm going to get this sorted because I really do want... I mean, like I said, the nice thing about Discord is that I can keep the chats. I'm always on it, so it's a good way to reach me as well, and it doesn't go away right after the hangout is over. So, okay, so where are we? But you know, star trails can be a really cool thing to take a picture of too. I've seen some amazing images of star trails in the background, and then what people will do is they'll take a foreground photo of something like a mountain or a castle or something like that in the foreground, and then they'll add those together, and we'll talk about software in another hangout, and make really beautiful still images of star trails. So star trails are probably the easiest thing to image. Wouldn't you guys say? It's just a matter of setting up a tripod, putting a camera on, opening the exposure or opening the thing, and boom, you're going to get star trails. Now, most people don't want star trails in a lot of these images, and that's where the clock drive comes in. So, back to the basics. What do you got to have to do imaging? In my opinion, the single most important thing that you've got to have, and don't skimp on this, is the mount for your telescope. I cannot emphasize enough that you need to have a sturdy platform, or all that other stuff you just spent money on is not going to work well. Imagine you're looking at a high magnification, very tiny field of view. We've talked about it in past hangouts. High magnification means narrow field of view, and you're following something very small and faint across the sky. And let's say you've got it set up on the ground on a weak tripod, and somebody walks right past your tripod, and you're looking through it, and what do you see? Even on the ground, you see it shaking. All this vibration going on. You really need to get rid of that, first and foremost. So I think a good mount now is the most important thing. And I don't mean the clock drive. I mean the mount, the tripod, the thing that everything sits on. The cheapest way to make a good solid mount that won't go anywhere is to pour a concrete pillar on the ground and mount everything on top of that. But that's, if you want a portable setup, that's not all that good idea. So really beefy tripods are an alternative. Alex, you travel a lot, right, when you image?
Oh, not too much. If I do my deep sky pictures, I am at home.
Oh, okay.
One image takes all night to have a result.
Okay, so do you have your telescopes mounted on a pier, or do you have really beefy tripods at home? What do you have?
I have a pier at home.
A pier.
Also, a
permanent pier, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If I go out, I use a tripod, wooden one, but a solid one, as you said before. Not only the mount has got to be solid and expensive. Good tripod for a good mount is, very recommended. So.
And then, Adam, do you want to add anything to that? I mean, feel free, Adam. I don't know what you're.
Yeah, it's just the mount is probably, as you say, the most important bit of kit because vibration is your enemy. Slightest vibration will ruin any astrophotography.
Yes, and so and it doesn't even have to be the most expensive part. When I had a permanent observatory, all I did was I went to Lowe's or Home Depot, and I bought a whole bunch of bags of concrete and a concrete pillar form for putting in concrete footers in the ground. Dug a hole, went about 2 feet deep, or maybe 3, because this was Colorado and the ground froze a lot. And I went down deep, poured it up, filled it up, and for the price of, I don't know how many bags it was of concrete, I had my basis, and it was by far not the most expensive part of the setup, but it was vital because I needed to isolate it from all vibrations. So that's the most important thing, in my opinion. And, you know, portability isn't as important with imaging. If you don't have a great area with lots of, you can overcome light pollution, you can overcome the fact that you've got a lot of, you know, crappy skies or whatever with image processing once you're taking images. So being portable and getting to a dark sky isn't as vital as it is when you're looking through an eyepiece. But when you're in, so you can kind of trade off the portability factor a little bit. And okay, so Peter Quinn's going, I'd say the mount is very important too, as an amateur photographer. Yes, very true. Okay, so
now let's connect the DSLR to the scope, maybe. I got the adapter here. You can buy it anywhere, adapting for your camera, the connector, and got a 2-inch bushing here for the T-ring. You connect it like this, screw it in, you're good.
Now, those are specific to the kind of camera you've got. You've got a Canon, I've noticed. So
yes,
you've got to buy the ones made for that. There's one for Nikon. There'll be one for, well, is Minolta still a camera? Can you still buy Minoltas?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. But anyway, it used to be a camera. And, yeah, so, the T adapter that he's talking about is specific to your camera. And then that has on the other side, on one side it has the connections for the lens. Snaps right in. The other side is just a screw thing, right? You want to do it?
Put your lens off.
Yep.
Exactly.
Let me make you hang on.
Make your adapter. Connecting it. That's very good. It gets quicker. Connect it like this.
Right.
Now you're fine to put it on your scope. Like this.
What is that? What's on the back of that scope? A focuser?
This is a focuser, this is a scope, and here is the camera connected.
Oh, that's the camera. Sorry, I couldn't tell. Okay. Okay, good. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, sure. So, right, that's really important. How to connect your camera to the telescope. And the camera specific thing you can order online. They're not that expensive. They're like $20 or something like that, or maybe they're more. But then the other adapters, they can run into quite a bit of money. That setup, Alex,
yeah.
is it for prime focus or for eyepiece projection?
Prime focus. Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that. There's two ways to connect your camera to a telescope. One of them is what Alex just showed you. T-ring adapter, what was that adapter that went on it? What would you call it?
It's a 2-inch bushing, I think, and
a bushing.
T-ring.
And then that connects directly to the telescope without an eyepiece in there. So you're basically using your camera as an eyepiece, and it's whatever magnification it is. Basically, it's the focal length of your telescope, and you are the telescope is projecting the light onto its image plane, and you're focusing the camera on that image plane. There's another way to do it, and I don't know if you've got an adapter, Alex, to show this. It's called eyepiece projection. That's where you can put an eyepiece in between the camera and the telescope and play around with magnification. With some of the eyepieces that are out there now, it's not possible because they're too big. But used to be, you just get this eyepiece adapter and throw an eyepiece in there. Of course, that's going to make it's going to basically project whatever comes out the eyepiece onto the digital image plane of the camera and let you get higher magnification that way. Do you use that very much, Alex, when you image?
Not anymore. I use Barlow lenses for a bigger magnification, like 2 times or 3 times.
Right. Remember we told you about Barlows. Barlows are just a lens that basically either, well, they extend the focal length of your telescope, giving you high magnification. And they're easier to deal with. You can get 2x Barlow, 3x Barlows, things like that. And we talked about that a while back. You could also get a telecompressor, which is important in imaging. Some cameras because a telecompressor reduces the focal length of your telescope. A lot of them are like 2,000 millimeters, like a C8 or LX200. Those telescopes have long focal lengths, relatively speaking. Well, you need sometimes to get a wider field of view, because if you put a camera on a telescope the way Alex just showed you with a prime focus, you're looking at a very narrow area of sky. And a telecompressor will give you a wider field of view. Mm-hmm. And those are very important as well. So let's recap. Sturdy mount. Big old concrete pier is best, but anything you want, big steel, I-beam, whatever you want to put. Super beefy tripod. Don't skimp on this. And have a solid footing for everything else. The next thing Alex said, you need a way. Well, he also talked about connecting the camera to the telescope. Very important. You can get those kinds of adapters specific for your camera. And then we recommend using prime focus. That's where you don't put anything in between the camera and the telescope. You use but you can put in Barlows. 2x Barlow will give you higher magnification. A telecompressor, like 0.8 or something like that, will shrink it down and give you a wider field of view. I ended up using telecompressors more because I wanted to get wider fields of view. So we're still not done. You're not done yet. We got to have a way to track the stars. Now, most telescopes, go-to telescopes, have built-in clock drives on them, because they also let you polar align your telescope easily. Polar alignment is critical. You want to get as close. You want to pull. Well, it's not critical. You can do it, I suppose, in alt-azimuth way, but you want to definitely have a way to track the stars. I don't know, Alex and Adam. You tell me. I think most off-the-shelf telescopes that you buy from a reputable manufacturer like Celestron and Meade and Takahashi and all these guys make pretty good drives.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say?
Pretty good money with it.
What's that? Yeah, they're not cheap, but what you get with a C8, off-the-shelf C8, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good drive. Yeah. And I would even go so far as to say some of their cheaper stuff, like the $350 telescopes that we told you about before Christmas. Those kind of telescopes can do some pretty good imaging too, but they've got to be on a steady surface. The inner workings of the mount might be crap. They might have some slop in them or something, and then that's going to make them difficult to use. But if you stick with the C8 or higher, an LX200, those are pretty good telescopes. I don't have any. I mean, as far as go-to tracking ability, right?
You need an equatorial mount.
Okay, good. Go. Explain that.
Well, you can get Dobsonian-mounted telescopes that have go-to trackers, but if you try and do astrophotography, any imaging, you're going to get field rotation, where the Earth's spin makes the image move, and so you're not going to be able to, regardless of how good your tracker is, it's not going to do the job unless you have an German equatorial mount. Right,
or an alt-azimuth mount on an equatorial wedge. So we've told you before about the different kinds of mounts. German equatorials, they have a polar axis. They point to the North Star, and the fork-mounted telescopes that you see are usually, you buy them alt-azimuth, which means that they rotate this way and the tube goes like this, up and down. So what we're looking at here, let me hold on to that, Alex. Don't make it go away. Let me do.
Mm-hmm.
Why does my cursor keep disappearing? No, leave that up. Leave that up.
Okay.
I want to talk about it. Oh man.
Yeah.
Hang on. I'm sorry, I'm having cursor issues. I know that's a stupid problem to have, but I'm having it. Oh, come on. All right. Click. Thank you. God. I have the dumbest problems with these Hangouts. Okay. So that is a C what?
C1100.
Damn, Alex, you got some good toys, man. That's a C11. off the shelf. It looks like with sitting on top of an equatorial wedge. That wedge costs about a couple $100 in the U.S. and
500, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And what it does is it puts those forks at an angle, and those forks are supposed to point to the North Star. And then the telescope is perfectly polar aligned. And what does that get you, Alex? Why is that better than just having it straight up and down, the forks?
The straight up and down, you will have a movement on long exposures while imaging, and you can correct it good. So if you are aligned to the Earth axis, you just have to follow on one axis, on the distanciation, I think it's called, and you're fine with it for taking the long exposures.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And we call that it's often called field rotation. When you have the forks like this straight up and down, you have to correct as the Earth rotates in two directions, both in right ascension and in declination, because the telescope is pointing straight overhead, and a star, as it goes straight overhead, will actually appear to rotate over time in the field. If you can get rid of the declination part of it by just mounting it on a wedge like that, and then you only have to worry about counteracting the Earth's rotation. And so you don't get something for long exposures. Even if you tracked it for 120 seconds and you didn't have it polar aligned, you would still see a star trail because you've got field rotation you didn't correct for. So you need those wedges. Those wedges are important. So here we are. What do you got? Is that a time lapse of you tracking?
This is a time lapse of tracking, exactly. And you see a guider, the MGen guider, on bottom left. And this is a CPC rotating around the axis and guiding a star with the guiding scope.
Hang on, what's rotating?
The rector sensation axis. It's mounted on wedge.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And it's guiding, like the picture before. And this is now how it runs.
There you go. Okay, that's pretty. Okay. Yeah, if you're listening to this in the podcast form, which usually comes out on 365 Days of Astronomy, you need to watch the video because Alex has got some cool stuff here to show. Michael Jobin's going, I have a Meade 8 CAS. Okay, that's pretty good. That's a good start. Mount it on something solid and get yourself a wedge, and you're halfway there as far as getting a thing. So Peter Q, what are you uploading here? It's a Wikipedia image of the Carina Nebula. Can Ahmad and YouTube please share this? I don't know how to go from Discord to that, but yeah. So that's a beautiful image. We're going to talk about how those are made in just a bit, but we're nowhere near there yet. Okay, so back to what you need. So where are we? Sturdy mount, equatorial wedge. Go some way to track the stars. Most clock drives that come with telescopes are fine.
And balance weights.
Oh, hold on. I'm summarizing. And then we need a way to connect the camera to the telescope, which is called a T-mount. And there's various adapters that then screw into that T-mount for attaching it to your telescope. And okay, and then Alex is also saying
balance weights.
Balance weights. Now, on the right side of this image here that you're showing, on the tube itself is a track. And on that track is stuff. Why don't you explain what that is?
Yeah, balancing out the tube. Very little motors inside for correcting two axes. And you won't have a good result without balancing your mount, your equipment on your setup. This is, I think, the most important. Balancing out, and then you can start your imaging.
Yes. Now, all of that weight you can see at the bottom of the telescope that Alex has. That's a lot of stuff.
The camera.
Yeah, there's got a camera on there, and that stuff gets heavy. And that mount, that weight that's up on the top, takes off the strain on the clock drive and allows the telescope to move freer. You don't want the telescope fighting all that weight. The more crap you put on the end of that telescope, the more the clock drive has to work. And so these counterweights help balance that out a little bit. And that's important. And okay, good. So a way to balance out the equipment you put on. And I'm going to mention something that I used to think was a nice to have, but I actually, after I bought one, felt like this was a required accessory, and that is an electronic focuser. You want to be able to get these images as in focus on the camera plane as you can get. But believe it or not, when you're looking at the readout from a camera, you don't get a very clear picture of what you're trying to focus. And I think that a focuser is vital because it lets you move the entire focusing arrangement, the entire thing back and forth so that it's in precise focus. You can image a star, for example, and you can move the camera through the focus of that particular evening. And when the star it'll be blurry, 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 and then the more you focus it, it'll get to a nice sharp point, and then you'll go past it, and it'll be blurry, 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 and then you can go back into where it's nice and sharp again. And then most digital focusers have a number, and you write down that number. That's your focus for that image. And then you can go back, because a lot of things affect focus. The temperature of the night that you're observing, all the things you've got connected to it. And then you can go to your object that you actually want to image and know that you're in focus. So I think an electronic focuser is vital. What do you guys think?
Always nice to have.
No, I used to think that too. But when you try to do without it, it's a real pain. How do you focus, Alex?
The button of mask like this.
All right, explain that.
This is Celestron. Let me show you a picture. Let me share my screen. Just a second.
Focusing is not trivial, folks. This is hard.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Let me make you big. Hang on just a sec. Okay, there we go.
You have a bright star focusing, and you use a button of mask, and it makes trails, or how do you call it, stripes, or like this you can see here. And if you're on perfect focus, you get an image of the star like in the middle of those three images you see here. And I think it's a very good way for focusing.
Yeah, I had never seen one of those kind of masks. That's pretty good. Another way you can, I'll tell you a poor man's way to focus. What I used to do was I would get out one of those manila folders that, file folder, and I would cut out a circle, and I would put in 3 small sub apertures of about 2 inches each. I put one aperture on the top and 2 other apertures on either side. And then I would just tape it over the top of the telescope tube. Whenever you look at anything through that's out of focus, you're going to see 3 different images. Like if you look at a bright star, you'll see 3 stars when it's out of focus. And as you move the focuser towards the focus, you'll see those 3 images become one. And then you're in focus. And that was one way I used to do it too. But Alex has a super fancy one. That you can do it as well. But focus is critical. Otherwise, you're going to get blurry images. Who wants that after you spend all that money, right? So focusing is huge. I would say you need a focuser.
With that one, Alex, do you line up the diffraction spikes?
Yes, the spikes, exactly. Yeah.
You line them up so that they're perfectly symmetrical and aligned. Yeah.
Aligned to the middle. All 3 are looking. If they're looking perfect, you are good.
So that has lines that are at different angles.
Yeah.
And by making those the same angle, you've got a focused image. Or by merging those, I guess.
Yes. They also look like this maybe. This is a simple one for refractor. And my one has got a hole, as you have seen before, for the secondary mirror on the.
That's right, for the secondary on the Schmidt cast on the C11.
Yes.
Right.
Oh yeah, like this, or what you said before is something like.
Yeah, that's what I used. That's what I used. I just made mine though. I didn't have a fancy one
like this.
Yeah, I don't know what you get that's more with those, but maybe you get a better focus. I don't know. You reach a point where you're only going to get so good, and a lot of it depends on the seeing that you're in, and that's another topic for another day. But when you're out on a given night, that's why I told you in the last hangout, winter is the best time to go out, especially in image, but it's also the clearest night skies you're going to get because the air is crisp and cold, and most of all, it's still. There's not a lot of roiling and boiling in the atmosphere, and you get that in the summer all the time. But how much that roiling and boiling goes on, it's called seeing, when that means that no matter how good you focus, you're not going to get a point on a star. You're always going to get a fuzzy image if you have poor seeing. You could have the best optics in the world, and you're still not going to get a decent image if you've got crappy seeing. I'll tell you a story sometime about the University of Colorado. When in the Sommersbosch Observatory, they built an observatory in the middle of Boulder, Colorado, but they built it out of stone, and those stones radiated all night long, giving them bad seeing all night long. So, but that's huge. Focus. Everything else you do is going to be crap if you don't get this right. What you got there, Alex? Is that another image?
This is another bad enough example for defocused and focused.
So the image on the
right is focused, and on the left is defocused.
Yeah.
I
got to be honest with you, I'm not seeing it. I mean, I'm seeing the same diffraction spikes. I don't get how the other one is not.
I try to get a big one.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, the three circles I could get when the three circles become one. That's right, Michael Jobin. The air is dry, usually in the winter.
As Peter says in the chat, it's a practiced art focusing.
It is. Peter Q, it is a great image, that Karina, for sure. Larry Keys, hey. Okay, are you pulling up another? Well, so while he's pulling up another image of that, let me get myself back into this. And all right, so we've covered focusing. I want to talk a little bit about cameras in a minute, because there's what's the advantage of using your DSLR versus an astronomical camera like SBIG or something like that you can buy specifically for astronomy. And I'll mention that briefly in a minute. That'll be the last part we go to, but I want to make sure I've got everything. A way to find things. Oh wait, no. Well, yeah, I guess so. One of the things you've got to do is, once you've gotten your telescope polar aligned, you've got your camera on it, it's reading out images, you've got to have a way to know that you're centered on whatever it is you want to take a photo of. The Orion Nebula is pretty big, but you want to make sure it's centered properly. So there's I think part of this discussion should be telescope control software. And Stellarium lets you control your telescope. The Sky software lets you control your telescope. And I believe it also lets you read out your image from the camera at a certain rate, so that you can see if you're reasonably centered on that object or not. But you need some software to do that. Now, I don't have a specific recommendation for that, but that is another critical thing that you've got to have to do it. The most telescope control software, and I think even now the telescopes come with them, with some way of reading off certain cameras as well. Larry also uses three circles. That's right. That's because it's a good way. So the let's see. Okay. What did you find what you were going to show us, Alex, or should I move on to the cameras?
Move on to the cameras.
Okay. Cameras. Alex mentioned DSLRs. Great purchase. What's good about them is that you can use them for other things besides your amateur astronomy hobby. As long as it has a detachable lens, you could probably get a T-mount for it that will let you get your images okay. But you can buy really expensive cameras designed for astronomy, and there are a couple of manufacturers. Apogee is one. Santa Barbara Instrument Groups, or SBIG, is another. And these are actually professional quality cameras. In fact, professional astronomers use them, and they tend to have huge pixel arrays inside of them, right? Do you have any, Alex? You probably have both, right?
No.
What do you as your camera? You use mostly DSLRs?
Yes, I have this Canon 60DA, and that's what I use most.
Okay, say that again. Your 6DA. What'd you say?
60DA. This is the original astronomical Canon astro camera.
Okay.
From Canon. And an astronomical camera, like a CCD camera or something, is for me too expensive. So.
Yes, they can be on order $8,000.
Yes.
Something like that. And Larry's talking something about the SBIG 8 is also a really good camera. And the advantages to these are they have a lot of pixels, way more than you're going to get on a DSLR, I think. But the pixel size is also very small, and they are generally more. They are designed to operate at colder temperatures, and they have ways to cool them that a DSLR does not have.
Yes.
And that's important because of something called dark current. Every CCD has this. We'll talk about this in the next hangout when we talk about image processing. You got to get rid of that. You open up a camera exposure, you just leave the shutter open, and the CCD is collecting these feeble photons that have traveled across the universe, and they land on that CCD. Well, it's getting hot while it's doing that. And all this thermal noise is generated on the CCD itself. It's just this black sort of snowy pattern. And CCDs need to get that down, you need to cool them. And that's why you see a lot of professional astronomers using liquid nitrogen to cool their cameras with, because they need the dark noise to be gone as much as they can get it gone. You're always going to have it a little bit, but they cool it to liquid nitrogen temperatures. And these astronomical cameras that you can buy usually have either a way to put liquid nitrogen in them, or they have a pump that you can circulate coolant through, like ethyl glycol or something, to suck the heat away from that CCD while it's while it's open and exposed. Because you're looking, in some case, I don't know, what do you guys do? Sometimes you can be, you said 120 seconds for that one. That's nothing. You can have things up for 10 minutes or more, right? So imagine having a 10-minute exposure or a 30-minute exposure, and you're just trying to get this image of a very far away galaxy, the closest that you can see with the diameter of your telescope, and you're maxing everything out. You need a long exposure, but dark noise would just overwhelm you if you didn't have a way of cooling it. You couldn't do it with a DSLR. You'd have to do something with smaller exposures. So that's what you get with these astronomical grade cameras. And even Alex, who has every toy imaginable, doesn't seem to own one of these.
You don't have to have anything. Let me show you another picture. And remember what you just said.
Okay.
Well, apples. Just pick. Yeah, here we go. Okay, okay, I will show one picture. Here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Like this. This is the Hercules cluster.
Oh, wow.
With some galaxies in behind. And it is made with a DSLR, and it's 20 minutes exposures, I think 15, 20 minutes exposures. And for cooling the camera, you take a break of maybe 3 or 4 minutes in between those exposures. And you take a very low ISO ratio. I took, I think, 200 or 400 ISO for that, for each exposure.
Okay.
So you get less noise and more signal
Right.
combination.
Yeah, the ISO setting is what we talked about at the beginning. That is it's sort of a balance between noise and sensitivity. So lots of sensitivity equals lots of noise, but he set that down. So you said between the 20 minutes or 10 to 20 minutes, you said you in between you let the air cool the camera between exposures.
Yes.
Was that on a cold night?
No, it was, I think, in spring or fall. You just have to take a break, and the camera's getting cooled again. This is about, I don't know, 1656. 20 times 15 minutes exposure on ISO 400.
Okay. All right. Now, that's a good point, because even when you're taking video with these cameras, DSLRs aren't great with video. They really only take about 10 minutes of video at a time because the CCD gets too hot. And video cameras that you buy for the purpose, like the Canon Vixias or Legrias or whatever it is you have, those CCDs are designed to be run at a very fast rate. They also suck in low light, but you know, the DSLRs tend to overheat if you do too much video on them. So they are high quality video, but you could generally only do about 10 minutes at a time. Mm-hmm. And so that's a good point. So they have to be cooled in between exposures. Okay, well, wow, shoot, it's 4 o'clock. Okay, wow, we already sucked up the whole hour. I think we got it, though. I think we talked about everything I wanted to say. I want to let me just summarize, and I'll get to some chat comments. Sturdy mount. Don't skimp on that. Beefy tripod. If you have to, I mean, I even made one out of a car axle once. I mean, a nice pier. You want something really super strong, huh?
You got an image of that?
I wish I did. No, this was back in the 80s, man. I don't. Even if I did, it'd be in the photos. And then a clock drive. You need a good clock drive, but that usually comes with the camera. Optics, by the way, we didn't talk about optics because almost all of the cameras that the telescopes we're talking about have decent enough optics for this. If you buy a Celestron or a Meade or a Takahashi or whatever's out there that's, you know, around the $3,000 or $5,000, $1,500 range, you're going to get fine optics. We didn't talk about doing it with a Dobsonian. We should probably make that a hangout all on its own. So, and then you know, way to connect the camera to the telescope. You need that. You need a way to focus the telescope. You need a way to offset the field rotation of the telescope of the image as it goes across the sky. So you need a wedge. It needs to be equatorially mounted, and you need a way to cool the camera. Or you take smaller exposure photos. You need a way to find it and center the object. That usually is done with readout software on the camera. Did I forget anything?
Start with easy, bright objects like the moon.
Oh, okay. Well, objects to photograph. Yeah. The moon, the planets, the best way to start. You can even use a webcam. That's also a topic for another day. On really, really bright objects. They make little adapters for certain webcams. You can put them on and read them out really fast and get like Mars and Jupiter and really cool images out of it too. So we'll talk, maybe we should do is split up. Okay, next week we'll talk about image processing, and then we'll talk about maybe webcams and getting imaging the planets and things like that, and then maybe deep sky objects. Maybe we'll do it like that. I don't know. But this is like I said, this is a topic that is as big as the subject of amateur astronomy itself. So those are what you need to get started. It's a little bit overwhelming. It's not a beginner activity. This is advanced stuff. I've been imaging using all kinds of telescopes, both professional and amateur, for at least 30 years. Obviously, Alex has been doing it for quite a while as well, and Adam has we've all been doing this for a very, very long time. So, yeah. But none of it, you know, I spent most of my time observing. Okay, any comments you want to read out, Adam, or is anything happening on the chats? I'm seeing Discord, but only Peter Q's been on Discord. Come on, guys, we need Discord, man. I know. I was
going to ask Alex to finish off the show with one of his beautiful images.
Okay, that's a good idea. That's a great idea, Adam.
Okay.
Okay, this is your shot. Give us an image that you've taken that you're most proud of for telescope talk. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, go back. So go back to the other one first.
Yeah.
That is the Orion Nebula.
That's today's technique. And this is a technique, I think, 30 years ago when I started. And this was 30 years ago, the best image, one of the best images I could take of the Orion Nebula. And this is today. Quite a difference.
That goes to show how much better CCDs are than film. That other one was film, right?
This was film. This was actually a slide, Minolta. And this is my DSLR. Canon 60K.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
I could go on with that. This is M51.
That horse head was
and
awesome.
This is today.
Whirlpool, yes.
Yeah.
Wow, these are gorgeous. That's film?
That's film. That's digital.
Look at the field of view difference, though. I mean, you can really see the difference. Oh, the ring. That's a great ring nebula photo.
Yeah. And this is 30 years ago. This is today's technique. This is the moon. Analog on the slide. This is today. Much sharper, much clearer.
Looks like something from Stanley Kubrick movie. That's awesome. Look at Saturn. Wow.
This is with a webcam.
That's a webcam. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a future hangout.
Yeah. And
poor man's adaptive optics, folks. I'm telling you. We'll go into that in a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
This is 1991 with a big sunspot. And this is today much crispier.
Yeah, that's
I think that the first one wasn't bad, Alex.
I know it wasn't.
This one?
Yeah, that's really good. You can't see the granularity on the sun as much, but
you couldn't 30 years ago.
yeah. That was a problem with film, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is with a CCD camera.
What wavelength is that right there, Al? What is that? H alpha?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, H alpha is. We should talk about solar imaging too. That's 56, 55, or 55, 60, something angstroms. It's in the. Say it again.
653, I think, something like
65. Okay, I have 50. Yeah, 65, 45, or something like that is the wavelength in angstroms of H alpha. Pure red of the hydrogen light. And it gives a lot of detail on the solar surface. And is that this past August?
This was August in Kentucky. Yeah.
There you go.
It was 200 millimeter lens, so
the eclipse.
It wasn't that detailed, but could afford to transport to the US and have some pictures on it.
Daily speeds.
It was, I think, 30th of a second. Yes.
30th of a second? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you can see there was quite a development the past years, and like this.
No, Larry, that wasn't the pinwheel. That was M51. That was Whirlpool that he showed.
Okay.
That's Whirlpool right there.
Yeah. And this was 30 years before.
So be glad you don't have film anymore, folks. That would have been a real barrier to entry. I'm here to tell you now. It was a pain in the butt. I used Hyper 2415 film.
You hypered.
Yeah, but that's a whole other story right there. Okay. Well, there you go. Time? Okay. Well, thank you, Alex. This has been great. Okay. Well, there you go, folks. There is your intro into imaging with your telescope. You need a lot of stuff, and yeah, it's expensive. So that's why we advised you when we first started this Hangout series to get comfortable with the night sky. Get out there with a scope that you don't even need to think about how to use. You just go out and use it, and you look and see things. And then go to the web and look at all of Alex's photos that he's taken and go, wow, that's a really pretty photo. Good job, Alex. That's great. And save yourself the trouble. or go to Hubble site and look at the Hubble Space Telescope. It's like, that's something I should have led off with. Alex is getting close. He really is with his images, but you're never going to get the kind of images that you see with Hubble or Spitzer and all the space telescopes out there. They have been, think about it, hundreds of millions of dollars to be up in orbit in space to get those kind of images to you. Alex is doing his best. I think he's rivaling what I would say is ESO quality imagery because, or the ground-based telescopes. Without adaptive optics, he's doing awesome. And so, but that's, he's at the forefront of it. So don't expect, like the Carina Nebula that Peter showed on Discord. It's, the one, hi, Uncle Bill. Yeah, he showed a Carina Nebula image. There's no way Alex is going to get that. So, because there's just too many filters and things like that. Yes. There was a question about, and I want to mention, there was a question a while back on the chat about why does Hubble only take black and white film images, and that's something we should address here. What Hubble does and what Alex does and what all amateur astronomers do is they collect photons at a specific wavelength that come in. Now, with a DSLR, you're collecting all of those photons. But imagine that you put a filter in, a green filter or a red filter. You're only going to get those red photons that get through. And when you look at the image, do you have a raw image, by the way? Alex, let's show them a raw image.
Let me show that.
You're only going to get the number of red photons that came through, and it's still going to be grayscale. It's not going to be red. It's just going to be, here's all the red photons that came through. You put a green filter in, here's all the green photons that came through. Put a blue filter. This is all the blue photons that came through. And then what you do is you take those red, green, and blue images that are all grayscale by themselves. There's no color in there. And you apply that in image processing. We'll talk about this next time. And you put the red in the red channel, the green in the green channel, the blue in the blue channel, and boom, you've got a color image. You say, only take this image and show it as the color blue if it's the blue image. Take these pixels and only show them as the color green if it's a green image. So that's how that works. Now, Alex is showing you right here, let me make this big, a raw image that comes off of this is with no processing at all.
Yes.
That actually looks really nice. But what he doesn't have, and what a lot of times you have, is cosmic rays, or you have a lot of artifacts in there. It looks like a mess. I mean, Alex is actually taking pretty clean images here. But Hubble...
What is that, Alex?
This is a combination of all the pictures I took of that night. And yes, several raws stacked. And it's an imaging technology.
Yeah, we're going to talk about stacking next time.
Yeah.
But this you can see it's kind of fuzzy, it's hazy, there's not a lot of detail. In Hubble, they look even worse. They've got cosmic rays where they've got hot pixels. He doesn't seem to have any hot pixels in his camera. These are pixels that are always on. You got to get rid of all that stuff. And raw images are actually pretty ugly looking things. And so we'll talk about image processing next time, but that's a pretty good example. Although, as with everything I think Alex does, even his raw images look great. So,
this is a raw.
Oh, here we go. Okay, that's a better raw image. That one's pretty nasty looking. I can't see anything.
I didn't use to stack it. Yes, you can't see anything, and it was a horrible picture.
It's got a lot of dark current. You could tell by how gray the background is. He hasn't removed any of that noise yet. And if you zoom way in on any of these pixels in this region of this image, you'll end up seeing some snowy white noise in there. Like if you scaled it from between 0 and 50, you'd probably see all kind of noise in there. So, okay.
It was March last year. So it was a quite cool night. It was a 20 minutes exposure. And this is a raw image.
So there's another raw image. So you don't start, that's only half so you've spent all this money. You have gone outside and you've taken these great pictures with all of your great equipment, and you take them inside and you go, wow, I still got work to do. You're not done yet. Now you've got this stuff. You got to make it look nice. And that's that's called image processing, and that'll be the topic of the next hangout. That's what Alex does on all of his images. That's what they do and he probably does the same thing they do at the Space Telescope Science Institute when they deal with Hubble images. They do it all automatically, but nonetheless, and I've written a lot of software that does this stuff automatically. So that'll be the topic of next time. Adam and Alex, am I missing any comments, anything like that? We got to go. I'm 10 minutes over.
Yeah, different colors have got different focal lengths, so if you use filters, you get much, much sharper and crispier pictures than with the DSLR. But that's physics behind the wavelengths.
Yep, and the importance of focusing again. You got to refocus when you change the filter. And filters.
Yeah, and it doesn't make it easier.
No, it does not make it easier, but you can get some really nice pictures.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't. Boy, lot of good comments in here. If I weren't so over time, I would read some of these. Thank you guys very much. Next time, please, I'll try to work out Galaxia, the Discord issues, but let's try and do it on Discord next time. I'm telling you, it helps Deep Astronomy, because I need ways to show potential supporters that I have this kind of traffic, and if we go to deepastronomy.space, I can show that stuff. You're supporting Deep Astronomy by doing these kinds of things. I'm not just asking it to make your life difficult, because I need a way going forward in 2018 to be able to support these hangouts that we're doing. And I don't want to have to ask everybody for money all the time. Even though if you did want to go to Patreon, I'm not going to say, thank you. Okay. So, but anyway, that is it for this week. 10 minutes over. I'm so sorry. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Alex, Adam, awesome hangout. Thank you guys very much. Next week, or a week after this, we're going to talk about image processing.
Okay.
Get ready for that. And if you've got any questions and comments, please let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, keep looking up.